Grace had been warned about Cathara 7's wildlife. The briefing had been clear. Apex predators, pack hunters, territorial behavior. Avoid at all costs. What the briefing hadn't mentioned was that the cubs would be curious. She'd been collecting soil samples near the crystalline forests when she first noticed them. 3 sets of luminescent eyes watching from behind the purple-barked trees. Catharan stalkers, juveniles by the size of them, each about as large as an earth wolf, but with 6 legs and bioluminescent stripes that pulsed with their breathing. Grace had frozen, her hand moving slowly to the plasma pistol at her hip. The expedition leader, Henry, had drilled protocols into everyone's heads. Predators were to be avoided, not engaged. The colony couldn't afford casualties, but the cubs hadn't attacked. They'd simply watched, tilting their massive heads with an almost comical curiosity. One of them had chirped, a sound that seemed entirely too innocent for a creature designed to tear through reinforced armor. "Shoo," Grace had whispered, waving her hand. "Go find your mother." The cubs had taken a step closer. That had been 3 hours ago. Now, as Grace trudged back toward the colony's perimeter, she could hear them padding behind her. She'd tried everything. Running, hiding, even throwing rocks. Nothing worked. The cubs followed with the determination of ducklings imprinting on the first thing they saw. "This is insane," she muttered, glancing over her shoulder. The cubs sat in perfect formation, their tails wrapped around their legs, watching her with those impossibly large eyes. "You cannot come home with me," the smallest one chirped again. Grace's resolve wavered. The colony gates loomed ahead, and Grace could already see Henry's silhouette in the watchtower. This was going to require an explanation she didn't have. "Grace," Henry's voice crackled through her comm. "Status report. We lost your signal for—" He stopped. Through the tower's magnification system, he'd clearly spotted her entourage. "Grace, are those stalker cubs?" "Define cubs," Grace replied weakly. "The things following you that could tear a person in half. They're babies, Henry. Look at them." Through the comm, she heard him groan. "Grace, we have protocols. The protocols don't cover orphaned wildlife following scientists home." "How do you know they're orphaned?" Grace paused. She didn't, but something in her gut told her these cubs were alone. She'd seen their ribs showing through their sleek fur, noticed how they moved with the exhaustion of the hunted rather than the confidence of hunters. "Let me bring them in," Grace said. "Just for tonight. I'll figure something out." "Absolutely not. Henry, they'll die out here alone. That's nature, Grace. And we're humans. When has nature ever stopped us from adopting things that could kill us?" The silence on the comm stretched. Grace knew Henry was thinking about the reports from other colonies. Earth animals had been introduced to dozens of worlds. Cats that hunted alien vermin, dogs that guarded perimeters, horses that carried supplies through terrain vehicles couldn't traverse. Humanity's tendency to befriend anything with eyes was legendary across the galactic community. "If those things damage any equipment," Henry finally said, "you're paying for it." Grace grinned. The colony's xenobiologist, Dr. Yuki Chen, had nearly fainted when Grace brought the cubs to the medical bay. But after scans, blood work, and a tense hour of observation, the verdict was clear. Malnourished, dehydrated, and terrified. Their mother was probably killed by a ridgeback. "Doctor," Chen explained, studying the data. "See these stress markers? They've been alone for days, maybe weeks. Without pack bonds, stalker cubs usually don't survive." Grace watched the cubs huddle together in the corner of the observation room. The smallest one kept looking at her, as if waiting for permission to exist. "Can they be domesticated?" Grace asked. Dr. Chen raised an eyebrow. "Humanity domesticated wolves 15,000 years ago. These cubs are already following me. They've shown zero aggression, and we need better perimeter security than drones." "Grace, this is smart," Henry interrupted, stepping into the room. He'd been listening at the door. The Galactic Council has been questioning our colony's viability. We're too far from supply lines, too exposed. But if we could prove humans can adapt local wildlife for security purposes. He trailed off, studying the cubs. It would change everything. That first night, Grace brought the cubs to her quarters. They'd been cleaned, fed, and given medical clearance. But the moment they entered her small living space, chaos erupted. The largest cub immediately launched itself at her sofa, claws extended. "No!" Grace's voice cracked like a whip. The cub froze mid-leap. Grace pointed at the floor. "Down. Now." To her amazement, the cub lowered itself, ears flattening in what looked distinctly like shame. "Fine," Grace sighed, looking at the 3 pairs of glowing eyes watching her every move. "You can stay, but no claws on the sofa. Understood?" The cubs chirped in unison. Grace collapsed onto her sofa, suddenly exhausted. Within moments, all 3 cubs had curled around her feet, their bioluminescent stripes pulsing in a synchronized rhythm that felt oddly soothing. 6 months later, Grace stood in the colony's central square as Ambassador Threll, a Voxian dignitary, observed her demonstration. The 3 stalkers, now full-grown and magnificent, responded to her commands with military precision. "Sit, stay, patrol, guard." "Remarkable," Threll said, their translator rendering the chittering clicks into standard. "We believed stalkers were untamable." Grace smiled, running her hand along the largest one's flank. They'd named him Saber. "Humans have a saying, Ambassador. Any animal can be a friend if you offer the right combination of patience, food, and belly rubs." Henry approached, datapad in hand. "The Council has approved our expansion request. 3 more colony sites, priority supply routes, and a request for Grace to establish a xenofauna integration program." Grace looked at her stalkers, remembering that day in the forest. "I guess following me home was the best decision you ever made," Saber chirped, then promptly lay down and rolled over, exposing his belly. The smallest one, Luna, immediately tried to climb onto the sofa in Grace's quarters, visible through the nearby window. "Luna, no claws on the sofa," Grace called out. The stalker froze, then carefully retracted her claws before settling on the cushions. Ambassador Threll's eyes widened. "You have trained an apex predator to respect furniture?" "Ambassador," Henry said with a grin, "you have no idea what humans are capable of when we decide something is cute." And across the galaxy, that truth would echo. Humans would adopt anything, befriend anything, and love anything that gave them even the slightest reason to try, even if it meant teaching predators proper sofa etiquette.